My pleasure. That was fun. Anyone else? Nami, do you have, yeah, go for it.
It's Nami, but I just had more of a general question because it sort of very much resonated with me, this concept of, overwhelm versus sort of thinking about, oh, I have a full life.
Mhm.
But if you truly think you are maxed out, you're
Mhm.
thinking, there's
Yes.
just so much going on. I mean, personally, in my clinical job, I have a big leadership position and I have, almost teenage kids. And I'm just kind of starting to feel like,
You
can
might
I,
actually
so
be over capacity. Does that
yeah.
make
And so
sense?
my question is, where with coaching is like, you do the work on your thinking and thinking patterns about, and a
Yeah.
lot of these things make a lot of sense where your energy is being drained and that's what's exhausting you versus sincerely, you are just
Yeah.
overstretched. And how do you figure that
So,
out?
yeah. So you start with the thinking and then you make the change. So when you've cleaned up your thinking, and you don't have to have cleaned it all up, even when you've cleaned it up a little bit and your nervous system is a little bit more balanced, more parasympathetic, you have clarity. And what I would say is you are likely over capacity. And so part of your energy drain is from the over. And so when you are more calm and you're looking at these things and you're like, wow, I am still over capacity, then you do need to make a change. You just don't want to make a change from a reactive space. You want to make a change from an intentional space. And so one way for you to try to think about that is thinking about, I like to coach from the feelings line, how you want to feel, because you probably aren't sure what you're going to get rid of. And in your list, you can't get rid of your children. So it's really sort of thinking, okay, well, how do I want to feel in my life? Let me actually ask you that. How do you want to feel? And it doesn't have to be the final answer, but just
I just feel like I want to have mental space to think about other things. I feel like I'm just barreling through kind of that whack-a-mole sort of mode, and I just want some space to, pick up those random magazines at home and read without feeling like, oh my God, I don't even have any brain space to like read fluff or anything,
and space is so you can create space, for example, with mindfulness or breathing, but you are absolutely right that it reminds me a bit of like someone in a toxic job. We don't just train their brain to think it's fine because it's not. And so when you are over capacity, I would just look at your list of things that are in your control, i.e., you can't get rid of your children, but maybe your children can do less, or maybe they don't need as much support from you, or maybe you can get help, but again, there may be things in your leadership roles you can do less of. So a lot of it is when you do the coaching, you actually create enough space so that snow globe can settle. And you're like, oh, this is not in alignment. This is not in alignment. So space is one feeling. I would actually maybe make a list of 3 or 4 that you want and use those as your filter to figure out all the things that you do over time, like over a week or 2. You're going to say, say you want to feel more calm or more peace or more connected. You can ask that question like, does this thing I'm doing help me feel more peace or more calm or more connected? One of those things is probably, purpose or I can't think of the right word around patience, but making a difference. That's not the right word, but then you can start to filter those things along the way and figure out which things are not in alignment. It's possible that everything you're doing is in alignment, but first I would do that sort of, you can call it an energy audit or a values audit, making sure that all the things you're doing are actually of value and figuring out whether they're aligned or not. And another tip around that is, do they deplete your energy or do they energize you? And being really honest with yourself, because a lot of the things we do because we should do them, not because we want to do them, but we think we're supposed to, especially leadership jobs. But I also see that within coaching, when you get coaching around a lot of the things that come up in leadership jobs, they can be a lot less expensive. And then sometimes there's enough room. So if you decide that these are all things you really want to keep for some particular reason, then you start working on your mind to see if you can get to that place. But at some point, you have to start filtering them. In my experience with coaching, you really want to work on this mindfulness and nervous system and a little bit of repletion and kindness to self. That has to be the baseline. Then you work on the thoughts. Then you have the clarity to start tossing things. And so many people that work with me, they may do, group coaching or do one-on-one and then group. And then all of a sudden they're like, oh, well, I'm changing jobs, or, oh, I gave up my leadership role today. Or it's not that they're giving up all of them, but they're creating a whole pie that works for their life. And I think that's where I love this concept of a whole pie, because everything in it has to work together. It's not like work-life balance. Everything is tugging at it. It's like all of these things are the whole pie of your life. And you want just like I talked about the soup, you want a pie that tastes good. And you don't want one that's overflowing into the oven and like setting the smoke detectors off, which is probably your current pie. And so it's sort of looking at all the ingredients and saying, I need a little more of this or a little less of this, because it may not be that you have to quit everything or start over. It may be slight tweaks. But I do find that with the coaching and the mindfulness, you get yourself in a different spot and you can start to see more clearly what's aligned and what's not. The other thing that may be of help is, and again, I don't know you well enough to know, but if the feeling work is hard for you, and I have a sense it is because the word you gave me was space, which it's not that it's not a feeling, but it's like, and I know why you want it, but you really want the feelings that a more spacious life would give you. You want to be able to breathe and you want to be able to relax. So in medicine, we were trained not to connect with our feelings particularly. And so many of us actually have a really hard time. So we can go to the thoughts like, I'm too busy, there's too much, all of these things, but we don't know how they make us feel. And so when you practice the mindfulness and you work in coaching on those feelings, you can actually connect with them. And then you know much better which things are in alignment and which things are not. Many of us don't know. And we're just coming from this reactive, like, there's that shell game, like we're just moving things around all the time. And we're so busy, we have no idea how we feel about anything. And so sometimes it's the slowing down, calming that snow globe. And then you can actually connect with like the feelings about each of the things, and then you'll know which are the ones that you want to keep and what you need to change. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm curious, like with your coaching, how do you kind of work with people with mindfulness? Like, do you do kind of things during the sessions with people around mindfulness, or do you recommend that people adopt sort of mindfulness sort of practices outside? Or
so a lot of people that come to work with me already do mindfulness. That's why they pick someone who brings mindfulness into coaching. But many of them do it as sort of a checklist practice as opposed to integrating it into their life. If you don't do mindfulness, I usually help you come up with actually quick, easy ways to do it, honestly, because that's where I really feel like you can do little things and get great benefit at the beginning. And I want to train your brain, like we were trying to train Michelle's, to notice like the progress and to notice that it feels good, and then you do more. So in one-on-one coaching, it's very personalized, because some people, you can give them a few recommendations, they start doing whatever their headspace is, and they're like, wow, I feel like a totally different person. Some people are like, this is not working. And so then we have to come up with other different ways. So I will work with people. A lot of people will do my yoga, which is also mindfulness in action. And so during one-on-one coaching, it's usually that, or brainstorming other things like restorative yoga poses that you can try. There's lots of different ways to do it. There's different kinds of breathing. And so once I get to know you, I have a better sense. And when you tell me why things aren't working, what happened, we can find an answer. But the coaching that we do is a little bit that, and a lot more on sort of the thoughts and figuring out how you react and respond to things. For people who also do group coaching. So when you work with me, you can do one-on-one on your own, you can do group coaching on your own, or you can do a hybrid, which is actually what I think is the best for most people, or do them in series. In group coaching, we actually usually do some mindfulness at the beginning and the end. And we actually talk about, I do more teaching in there in the beginning, and then we do group coaching a little bit like this. And so in the group coaching, you actually get some practice there because it's part of the sessions. The reason that I do retreats is because we actually practice mindfulness, and we do it all together in the same moment. So that's why I say it looks different depending on which venue you come in through. All of them have some mindfulness built in. And much of how I approach mindfulness is everybody can do it. You just have to find your way of doing it, your way that people are like, well, I can't stick with a practice. Well, you just haven't found the thing that feels good. You know, for some people, what kind of physician are you?
I'm a neonatologist.
Neonatologist. And so you work shifts. So that's why I was asking. So shift work people, restorative yoga is magic. And you can do even one pose, two poses, or yin yoga. So there are different ways of working with your nervous system and your body that can, a lot of people who have shift work really struggle to turn it off and turn it on. And so there are different ways of bringing mindfulness in for people who have those kinds of jobs. That makes sense. And so I think that all of those are sort of just different options. So it depends on you specifically. I love the creativity of figuring out, no human being is the same and no human brain is the same. And while we all have these similar life experiences and similar brain training, right? It's, we react to it differently. And in mindfulness, we often talk about the crack that lets the light in. That crack is a little bit different in each of us. So that's the beautiful part about coaching. You have to work with the brain that you have, and figuring out the way in for that brain is the fun part. And then once you figure that out, it's like, everything can begin to shift. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, no, that was really helpful. And in terms of, I like the stepwise sort of like repleting and then cleaning up, and especially sort of this concept of reactive. Like sometimes I'm like, I just want to quit. I'm just fed up, as opposed to like, then I'm like, is that the right thing? And so that's really
cool. And I think you are at TPMG, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm putting together.
Yeah.
I'm like, I know you.
Yeah.
When I asked you that, I was like, oh, I think now I'm putting it together. I think it really is a stepwise thing, because I think we do just react. We want this answer, and taking your time and letting that snow globe settle and really repleting yourself. The other thing that I mentioned at the beginning, and I think maybe you weren't here at the beginning, but is going slowly and not rushing, because I think we just want to fix it right away. And when we do that, it doesn't actually fix itself, right? We have this urgency tax.
Yeah.
And that actually makes things worse. So, and then I don't think there's a right way or a wrong way. I think many people are like, well, I have to pick the right group, or I have to pick the one-on-one first, or I have to pick the what, there isn't a right way. You really, my thought is you start by starting, you dip your toe in, and whatever it is momentum. And then you get to the next step, and you get to the next step. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Perfect.
Great, thank you.
My absolute pleasure. Yeah. Maureen, did you have a question or a thought? I see you now.
Yeah. Hi, it's Maureen. Can you hear
me? Yes.
Okay. I'm outside. There might be some traffic noise. I'm actually watering the garden. No, I enjoyed listening to the session, and I asked you my question at the beginning, so I'll just continue to listen.
Perfect. Wonderful. So, as we end, actually, I would recommend taking a couple moments just to breathe. And I would say that the breathing is one of the simplest pieces of mindfulness that you can bring into, you can do it in the nursery, you can do it in your car, you can do it anywhere. And there are lots of different ways to breathe, but even just starting by breathing in through your nose and out through your mouth can make a huge difference. And so for those of you that are sitting, and if you're watering, just water mindfully and breathe. Find your sit bones or ischial spines on your seat, on your chair, and connect them downward, and you'll notice things shift in your body immediately. And then you'll tilt your pelvic bowl a little bit anteriorly and align your spine all the way up towards the sky. And then take an inhale through your nose and an exhale through your mouth. And another big inhale through your nose and an exhale through your mouth. And we'll do one more, breathing in through your nose, long, deep, and full, sending it into the very bottom pockets of the lungs. Visualizing that atelectasis is popping open, and exhale, letting it out smoothly, long, even, and smooth. And then bringing a hand to heart and the other hand to top. So one hand on the heart space with the heel of the hand pressing into the heart, and the palmar surface of the other hand on the dorsal surface of the one on your heart. And noticing that hand to hand, hand to heart, pressing that hand into the heart space. We know scientifically here, you're releasing a little bit of dopamine, a little bit of oxytocin, and breathing in through your nose, shifting the physiology with the breath. Breathing out. And as you breathe in, bathing every cell with oxygen and nourishment. And breathe out long, slow, and even. And pause for a second, just noticing hand to hand, hand to heart. And noticing for a moment how you feel. Perhaps a little more spacious, a little more settled. Breathing a little bit easier. Noticing your nervous system too, noticing how it feels as you breathe in, sending the breath to every nook and cranny. Breathing out long and smooth. And taking a moment just to check in and assess. And then you'll lower your hands and open your eyes. Notice how you feel. And that was maybe 2 minutes. So tiny bits of mindfulness can really give you a huge shift. And if you don't have time for anything, breathe. Take 2 deep breaths, take 1 deep breath, and you'll notice a big shift. And so that can be your inroad to just have a little bit of shift and see how you might feel. Anyone have any final questions for me? I'm going to do another session in about 10 days. So if you want to join me, I haven't decided what I'm going to talk about yet. I like to decide at the last minute, whatever inspires me. I'm thinking about decision-making because it keeps coming up and how it can help you get unstuck. But I also like to, so that's my tentative plan. Unless something really exciting comes up, then I'll change it. So I'm happy to have any of you join me there. And I'm happy to have any of you reach out if you're trying to figure out like if one-on-one coaching would be the most helpful. If I have 2 groups that are starting fairly soon, Transition Well, which is for people who are contemplating making a change or in the midst of a change. The coaching there is really focused on getting unstuck and changing things. Doesn't mean you have to change things, but if you're feeling like you want to make a change, but you just haven't been able to, and or things in your life are changing and you're trying to figure out how to respond to that, there is a fair bit of decision-making work in there, a fair bit of conversation about quitting and changing, and also what to do next and what looks aligned. And I created that group for 2 reasons. One, because when I transitioned, I didn't really have any support, and there wasn't anything out there for people who were making big changes. And everything I found was like, go do this. It was very outcome-based. It wasn't very kind to your nervous system. And it wasn't about alignment. It was really about goal-oriented and making money or being successful or all these things, which was not really what I was looking for in my life. The other reason, so I really wanted to share what I learned over the process and the mistakes I made and things that will make it go much more easily. I also had many people in my ongoing presence group, which is the other group that I do, who went through coaching with me and then were making big changes. And what I found is that when that ongoing presence group had bunch of people who were quitting their jobs, other people had stress who maybe really wanted to stay and love what they were doing or who weren't in that phase yet. And so it just naturally, there were enough people to split kind of into 2 groups. And now people come into one group or the other. It's been just really beautiful and it feels wonderful to the people in both groups. So the ongoing presence group is essentially, it's just women physicians and we literally coach on everything. So and we do some transition coaching, and I will say this round, 4 people of that group are changing their jobs or already have in the midst of our 6-month thing. So it doesn't mean that you're not making changes, but, and in that group, so we coach on relationships, we coach on job stress, we coach on colleagues, we coach on our mothers, our children. There's a little bit of everything in that group. So if that group is of interest, both of them, you can do either the group on its own, group with one-on-one, and or Some people just want their own time and do it one-on-one, and that's fine too. So I also do that. I'm happy to have you email me if you have questions, or set up a time to chat with me.